A large dust cloud could be seen rising above homes after the hillside above Peru's Chavin de Huantar collapsed into the town.
About 200 homes have been damaged and one death has been recorded. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I'm CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Elago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines.
2.93 million Filipinos were jobless in May as the country's unemployment rate rose to 6%. Peso plunges to 56.06 to the dollar, its weakest in the last 16 years. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. abolishes government offices, including the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission. British Premier Boris Johnson agrees to step down as Conservative leader, paving the way for the selection of a new Prime Minister. And Sri Lanka declares bankruptcy.
The number of unemployed Filipinos increased to 2.93 million in May. That is higher than April's 2.76 million. Based on the May 2022 Labor Force Survey of the Philippine Statistics Authority, jobless or unemployed Filipinos rose to 6% from 5.7% of the previous month. However, the jobless level was an improvement compared with the 7.7% in May 2021. National Statistician Undersecretary Dennis Mapa says unemployment increases as the alert status in Metro Manila and other provinces eases. The top 5 industries with the highest decline in employment were the agriculture and forestry sector with about 733,000, police administration and defense with 159,000, arts, entertainment, and recreation with 109,000, education with 95,000, and professional, scientific, and technical activities with a 51,000 decrease in employees.
The Philippine peso closed at 56.06 pesos to the US dollar today, the weakest in the last 16 years. According to the Bankers Association of the Philippines website, the currency opened at 55.9 and reached a high of 56.09 before closing at 56.06 pesos to the dollar. The further weakening of the peso came 5 days after it reached the 55 peso level. The peso has shed more than 5 pesos in value since the first trading day of 2022 when it closed at 50.999 pesos to the dollar. An analyst warned that the local currency's rapid depreciation could further fuel inflation, which has already reached an almost 4-year high of 6.1% in June. Meanwhile, Philippine share prices also fell, with the PSE index losing 42.22 points or 0.67% to close at 6,303.19, and the all shares index losing 11.56 points or 0.34% to close at 3,389.12.
The Marcos administration is targeting a 4.2% inflation rate for 2023. Meanwhile, the Department of Finance has submitted to the Chief Executive its medium-term fiscal consolidation framework for the country's economic recovery program. Eden Santos has the story.
The Department of Finance is confident that the inflation rate under the administration of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. will slow down in the next years. Finance Secretary Benjamin Jokno says they are targeting a 4.2% or much lower inflation rate by 2023. However, the finance chief said they still forecast inflation to increase in the next months. He explained that the rate cannot be lowered overnight, adding that they would work on it gradually.
It will be down to 4.2% next year. That's the average inflation, and it will be back to the range, our target range of 2.2 to 4%. It will be back to 3.3% by 2024. Okay.
Jokno confirms that they have already submitted to President Marcos the medium-term fiscal consolidation framework for the country's economic recovery. The framework will be implemented starting 2023 until 2028 to cover the 6-year term of the Marcos administration. The framework includes the economic team's target of a 6.5 to 8% growth rate.
That's the 6-year term of the president. This is presented for the first time. Okay. So we want to show the world that we are conscious of having a sound fiscal management. So among the targets in that framework are the following: we expect the economy to grow by 6.5 to 7.5 this year. In fact, this is going to be the highest, the consensus is this will be the highest growth rate among all ASEAN plus 3 countries this year and next year. Okay? That's the consensus. When I say ASEAN plus 3, that plus 3 means Japan, South Korea, and China. Okay? So the Philippines is expected to have the highest growth rate for the next 2 years. And then it will be followed by a growth rate of 6.5 to 8% from year 2023 to year 2028.
The Marcos economic team also aims to lower the country's poverty rate before the president's term ends.
We're not only concerned with growth per se, we're also concerned with reducing poverty. Okay? So our target is that by the end of President Marcos's term, poverty incidence will be down to single digit, 9%. Okay? If I remember right, it started at around 25% during the Duterte's first year in office. But we were almost down to around 18, 17%. Then the pandemic hit us. Okay? So that there's a slight backsliding. But our target under this framework is that poverty rate will be down to 9% by 2028. Our target on the national government deficit to GDP ratio will be 3% starting 2026, 27, 28.
Aside from poverty incidence, the framework aspires to lower the national debt by 60% from its current 63% by 2025, increasing government spending by 5 to 6% every year for the Build program, and creating an upper middle income status that targets a $4,046 per capita income in the country are also among the targets of the Marcos administration. Eden Santos, reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. met with officials of the Department of Energy today. At the top of the agenda was the fuel crisis the country is facing. We have Kim Liana with a report.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has started addressing the high fuel cost battering the country. The chief executive convened a meeting with the energy officials, who will be the government's essential partner in responding to the series of oil price increases on the world market as a result of the war in Ukraine. President Marcos said they explicitly laid down the department's plan to address the pressing issues at hand. He has yet to appoint a head for the Department of Energy. Aside from the fuel cost, The Marcos administration also faces the challenge of high electricity cost. Finance Secretary Benjamin Jokno said the economic team did not discuss the Supreme Court ruling upholding a December 2013 rate hike by power distributor Meralco.
Hindi rin namin napag-usapan. But I think kailangan manggagaling ang dapat siguro sa Department of Energy. Unfortunately, wala pa kaming Secretary for Energy. Okay? So hindi napag-usapan yan. Okay?
Kim Liana, reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The House of Representatives leadership has assured that the 19th Congress will prioritize the deliberation and passage of the proposed 2023 national budget amounting to 5.268 trillion pesos. Presumptive House Speaker Martin Romualdez says the House will try to pass the proposed national budget on time to avoid having a reenacted budget. Based on rules, the executive branch has 1 month after the president delivers his State of the Nation address, or SONA, to submit to Congress its proposed appropriations. The bulk of the 2023 proposed national budget was prepared by the previous team of President Rodrigo Duterte.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s first 2 executive orders abolished the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission, the Office of the Cabinet Secretary, and the Office of the Presidential Spokesperson. The Presidential Communications Operations Office is also reverted to the Office of the Press Secretary. What will happen to the functions and powers of these agencies? Let's find out from Celine Dorado.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has signed executive orders abolishing agencies and reorganizing the bureaucracy. Under Executive Order Number 1, the President abolishes the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission and the Office of the Cabinet Secretary. Under EO1, the powers and functions of the PACC shall be transferred to the Office of the Deputy Executive Secretary for Legal Affairs, or DESLA. On the other hand, the functions of the Cabinet Secretariat will be transferred in full to the Presidential Management Staff, or PMS. The said office assists the President in establishing agenda topics for Cabinet deliberations or facilitates discussion of Cabinet meetings. All personnel affected by the abolition of the PACC and OCS could avail the benefits provided under existing laws. EO1 also creates the Office of Presidential Assistant on Military and Police Affairs under the administration of the Office of the Special Assistant to the President, or OSAP. The EO further states that PMS, OSAP, and the presidential advisors and assistants shall coordinate with the executive secretary in providing staff support to the president. Executive Order Number 2, on the other hand, renames and reorganizes the Presidential Communications Operations Office and its attached agencies to the Office of the Press Secretary. It also abolishes the Office on the Presidential Spokesperson, along with redundant positions, divisions, and units as may be determined by the Office of the President. EO2 states the need to rationalize and consolidate the communications arm of the administration for more efficient delivery of public policy to the public. Celine Dorado, reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Department of Health has recorded 140 new cases of Omicron subvariant BA.5, saying more Filipinos are being infected by this subvariant. Madeline Villar-Moratillo files the story.
The highly transmissible Omicron BA.5 subvariant has infected most of the latest COVID-positive Filipinos. The Philippines has recorded 313 cases of Omicron subvariants following the detection of 140 new BA.5 cases. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeres said this brought the country's total BA.5 subvariant cases to 233. Next is BA.2.12.1 with 70 cases, while BA.4 has 10. The Department of Health says of the new cases, 16 are fully vaccinated, 3 are unvaccinated, and 121 others are still under verification. 129 of the patients have recovered, 4 are still in isolation, while the status of the 7 others are being determined. The Department of Health has yet to identify the exposure and travel history of the patients. In the United States, BA.5 is now considered the dominant subvariant and comprises more than 50% of their COVID-19 cases. Madeline Villar-Moratillo reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Marcos administration is not considering lockdowns amid the increase in COVID-19 infections across the country. Finance Secretary Benjamin Diokno told reporters that general lockdowns will not be imposed, unlike what former President Rodrigo Duterte did at the height of the pandemic. Diokno said the situation is different now, with the majority of Filipinos having been vaccinated and boosted. The economic team does not also recommend imposing lockdowns.
The country now will, except maybe China, will go into general lockdowns. No? Talagang focused, more focused. And I think we have now graduated from being pandemic to endemic. We have to live with the virus. And kasi most of us are vaccinated anyway, right? Some of our even have boosters, no? 3rd and 4th booster.
Next up, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson resigns as Conservative Party leader. Sri Lanka admits bankruptcy and expects crisis to drag through 2023. And the UN says the world is moving backward on eliminating hunger and malnutrition. Learn more about these stories when Mata ng Agila International returns. Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced that he would resign as Conservative leader today, following a string of resignations that paralyzed his scandal-plagued government.
And to you, the British public, I know that there will be many people who are relieved, and perhaps quite a few who will also be disappointed. And I want you to know how sad I am to be giving up the best job in the world. But them's the breaks.
After days of refusing to resign, 58-year-old Johnson agreed to step down but would stay on as Prime Minister until a replacement is found. The leadership election will take place over the summer, and the victor will replace Johnson by the party's annual conference in early October, according to reports. Johnson had been clinging on to power despite a wave of more than 50 government resignations. But the departure of the Education Minister and Finance Minister he had appointed less than 2 days earlier appeared to tip the balance. Londoner Jane Purchase shares her thoughts on the issue.
Yeah, I'm sick of watching it. We just launched from one crisis to another. The whole news was full of years of Brexit, then years of COVID, now the war in Ukraine, and now this. So I flick between, but I just see an absolute disaster, an embarrassment, and a shuffling buffoon leading the country at the moment who needs to go now.
The government vault in Sri Lanka is empty. The country's prime minister has told parliament that Sri Lanka is bankrupt, and he says the economic pain will continue until at least the end of the year. For the 22 million people who live on the island, it will mean more of the same. They have endured months of inflation and lengthy power cuts after the government ran out of foreign currency to import vital goods. Lineups for the essentials are long. The outlook from the Prime Minister, a deep recession, accompanied by acute shortages of food, fuel, and medicine. Fuel supplies are so short that people have gone back to cooking with firewood instead. Now, the government is working on a debt restructuring plan with creditors. Once that is done, Sri Lanka can approach the International Monetary Fund about a bailout.
Zimbabwe announced it will introduce gold coins later this month as it tries to curb soaring inflation amid a slump in its currency. John Mangudia, the governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, said in a statement that the gold coins, which will contain 1 troy ounce of 22-karat gold, will be available from July 25. 1 troy ounce is equal to 31.10 grams. Mangudia added that each coin will be identified with a serial number and can be easily converted to cash locally and internationally. It will be called the Mosi Owatunya gold coin, which means the smoke which thunders, a reference to Victoria Falls, which is located on the border between Zimbabwe and Zambia. The country's central bank also specified plans to make the U.S. dollar legal tender for the next 5 years.
We have seen global hunger on the rise, reversing decades of our progress. This was what UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed said during the launch of the State of Food Security and Nutrition report at the UN.
With only 8 years to go before the SDG 2030 deadline, the call is clear. Food systems must be transformed to build resilience against these drivers. We cannot continue with the business as usual. We must make the transition from humanitarian relief to development, addressing the root causes. By investing in sustainable development, driven by transformed and reconceptualized food systems, we can address the root cause of hunger, food security, and malnutrition.
Now than before the outbreak of the COVID-19.
Kyu Dong-yu, Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization, echoed Mohammed's sentiments, saying 828 million people were affected by hunger in 2021. He added that this figure was way larger than 2020's 46 million and 150 million more than that of 2019. 5 international agencies warned the world is moving away from the zero hunger goal, which aims to end world hunger by 2030. The ongoing war in Ukraine, climate change, and inflation are mentioned in the report as major drivers of food insecurity.
A landslide has engulfed a town in Peru's Chaven de Huantar district. A harrowing video captured the collapse of the hillside as a large dust cloud rises and swallows up to 200 homes. Images also showed villagers running and screaming for their lives amid the destruction. The regional health directorate of Peru said at least one person has been killed. He was an elderly man who was unable to escape the river of rocks and soil. Authorities are searching for people who may have gone missing during the incident. They said an evacuation response team was also sent to help the victims who were left homeless.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the publication of a call between President Emmanuel Macron and Russian leader Vladimir Putin was a breach of diplomatic etiquette.
Мы, в принципе, ведем переговоры таким образом, чтобы нам никогда не было стыдно, если хотите. Мы всегда говорим то, что думаем. И готовы за эти свои слова отвечать и объяснять нашу позицию. Считаю, что дипломатическая этика, конечно, не предполагает вот такой односторонний слив.
The details of the confidential call days before Moscow's military operation in Ukraine were revealed by the broadcaster France 2 in a documentary on the French president's handling of the conflict. Lavrov also said that the West should recognize its responsibility for the death of civilians in Donbass and in other parts of Ukraine where the Kyiv regime uses weapons against civilians. Lavrov made the comments during his trip to Vietnam, where he also thanked his hosts for refusing to join stringent sanctions put in place by Western countries.
And we appreciate it, and I express my appreciation for the very balanced, objective position of Vietnam, which is demonstrated by refusal of this country to join illegal sanctions, and which is demonstrated by their desire to develop full-fledged cooperation with the Russian Federation. And
the arms that the U.S. and its allies continue to send to Ukraine will not have an impact on the outcome of Russia's ongoing military operation, National Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev said at a national security meeting at Khabarovsk. Patrushev also justified that Russia's operation was prompted by a whole range of threats that developments in Ukraine posed not only to Moscow's security, but to the whole world. The Security Council Secretary identified the spread of neo-Nazi ideology and the Ukrainian biological laboratories linked to the Pentagon as examples of such threats. Russian President Vladimir Putin has previously stated that the operation was launched to demilitarize Ukraine and also to protect the people of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics, the independence of which Russia recognized in February.
Taiwan Air Force shows off its new domestically built T-5 Brave Eagle advanced jet trainer as the island continues to strive for defense self-reliance against China's increasing military might. The new Brave Eagle advanced trainer is set to replace the military's decades-old AT-3 trainer and Vietnam War-era F-5 fighter trainer jets. Modeled after Taiwan's previous indigenous Ching-Kuo fighter jet, the two-seater Brave Eagle has new avionics, more fuel capacity, and ability to carry missiles and bombs. Taiwan's Aerospace Industrial Development Corporation, which manufactures the advanced trainers, plans to deliver 66 Brave Eagles to the Air Force by 2026. The self-ruled island has embarked on a homegrown defense program since President Tsai Ing-wen came to power in 2016, developing not just jet fighter or fighter jets, but also advanced armored vehicles to submarines.
British Airways is to cut 10,300 more short-haul flights between August and the end of October due to staff shortages coupled with rising demand. From London, we have Ryan Florentino with a report.
The latest announcement means nearly 30,000 flights will be removed from BA's schedule between April and October this year. The cancellations affect London, Heathrow, Gatwick, and City airports. The industry has struggled with staff shortages as demand for air travel has rebounded after COVID restrictions. British Airways have been among the worst affected by sector-wide turmoil as carriers race to meet soaring demand after the lifting of COVID restrictions. Fellow airline company Ryanair said in a statement that it was against the amnesty blaming other airlines for the situation they found themselves in. Ryanair added that it was operating its full flight schedule this summer, with no disruptions due to staffing shortages. Meanwhile, British Airways said it was contacting customers with the offer of a full refund or rebooking with BA or another airline. But the news of cancellations triggered an influx of calls to the airline. BA isn't the only airline to be forced to cancel flights over the busy summer period. EasyJet has cancelled some 10,000 flights between July and September to minimize disruption caused by a shortage of staff. The entire aviation sector has struggled to recover from the pandemic, during which it cut thousands of jobs as the industry grounds to a halt. I am Ryan Florentino reporting for Matana Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Next on Mata ng Agila International, Hong Kong suspends flight bans as it eases COVID rules. Cyprus brings back face masks a month after scrapping them. And get to see the South American fur seal return to the sea after being rescued in Argentina. All these and more stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Here on Mata ng Agila International. Monkeypox is back on the radar of the World Health Organization. The WHO is reconvening its emergency committee on the infection later this month or sooner if needed. WHO Chief Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says there have now been more than 6,000 cases in 58 countries, and that has him concerned.
Europe is the current epicenter of the outbreak, recording more than 80% of cases globally. In Africa, cases are appearing in countries not previously affected, and record numbers are being recorded in places which have previous experience with monkeypox.
He says testing remains a challenge, and it's likely that a significant number of cases are not being detected.
Hong Kong's new government suspended a long-standing flight route ban that penalized the airlines for bringing in coronavirus cases and severely impeded travel into the city, saying it was not very effective. The financial hub has become increasingly isolated under harsh pandemic restrictions as it mirrors a lighter version of China's strict zero-COVID policy, with the once busy Hong Kong airport now a relative aviation graveyard. New city leader John Lee's government said the circuit breaker rule was being suspended to achieve the most in fighting the pandemic with a minimum cost on the society. The government said large numbers of passengers will have their itineraries disrupted due to the mechanism. And as the supply of seats on planes and quarantine hotel rooms falls short, the social costs generated will be remarkably high. Traveling to Hong Kong will still pose a challenge as the city holds on to its mandatory 7-day hotel quarantine for all arrivals. Rooms at the designated hotels are also booked up for months in advance. Reopening Hong Kong's border, both with mainland China and the rest of the world, was one of former top cop John Lee's main campaign objectives before being selected to run the city by a small committee of Beijing loyalists in May.
Beijing announced a COVID-19 vaccine mandate for residents to enter public venues, becoming the first city in the mainland China to do so as it attempts to contain a highly infectious Omicron subvariant. In a news briefing, a city health official said that from July 11, people will need to show proof of vaccination to enter a wide range of public places in the Chinese capital, including cinemas, libraries, museums, gyms, stadiums, and training centers. Meanwhile, people who are not suitable for vaccination will be exempted from the requirement, the official added, but without clarifying how they can provide proof for exemption. The vaccine mandate comes as Beijing reported 3 cases of the BA.5.2 Omicron subvariant, which is highly transmissible and capable of escaping antibodies. It also remains uncertain how people who received vaccination overseas can satisfy the requirement. Health code systems in China do not currently recognize foreign vaccines, and those who were inoculated abroad have not been able to get their vaccinations registered.
Cyprus has reintroduced the mandatory use of face masks indoors for all people 12 years and older. The ruling, which takes effect tomorrow, comes after the Cypriot Health Ministry recorded 19,503 positive cases from June 25 to July 5. The decision represents a U-turn for the authorities of the Mediterranean holiday island. After lifting the previous mask mandate on June 1st, Cypriot authorities were hesitant about reinstating the face mask rule amid the peak tourist season. They feared a loss of arrivals, especially when neighboring destinations do not have mask mandates. Since the start of the pandemic, Cyprus has logged 515,596 coronavirus infections and 1,075 deaths out of a population of some 900,000.
Australia's flood crisis is now nearly a week old as the effects of torrential rain are being felt across the country's east coast. Although the rain has subsided, the water remains. There are now more than 85,000 people under evacuation orders. Those who are still in their homes have been told to be ready to evacuate at a moment's notice so they will not be stranded by flood waters. Communities, roads, and bridges are submerged under mud-brown water. In some areas, rivers have spilled over their banks and formed inland lakes. Damage is expected to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. In recent years, Australia has been struggling to deal with climate change, which has brought disaster caused by fire and rain. Aside from flooding, the country has had to endure massive brush fires.
In Maryland, the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth and Victim Services hosts a roundtable discussion about combating domestic violence and human trafficking. Discussion includes efforts to end human trafficking in the state where more than 1,600 criminal organizations have been reportedly disrupted or dismantled, and over 100 human trafficking victims have been rescued since the inception of the Maryland Criminal Intelligence Network program in 2017. Rosel Feria has more.
The state of Maryland hosts an international delegation from North Africa and the Middle East at the State House. This is in support of the state's participation in the U.S. Department of State's International Visitor Leadership Program. The roundtable discussion hosted by the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth and Victim Services, or GOCPYVS, talks about combating domestic violence and human trafficking in addition to sharing victim support strategies. Governor Hogan says comprehensive crime prevention and victim support are critical to reducing incidents of heinous crimes like domestic violence and human trafficking. The delegation represented Bahrain, Chad, Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, and the United Arab Emirates. Members of the delegation, composed primarily of emerging human rights and public health leaders, were sponsored by the U.S. embassies in their home countries. Rosel Feria, Glen Burnie, Maryland, Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
South Africa's president blames underage drinking for the deaths of 21 young people last month, most of them in their teens. Take a look. President Cyril Ramaphosa's comments came at a memorial service for the victims. They had all been celebrating at a township tavern before they died. The cause of death is not clear. Police have yet to wrap up their investigation, and autopsy results have not been made public. But Ramaphosa says South Africa has one of the highest rates of problem drinkers in the world. He says the young people should not have been drinking, adding he'll take action against tavern owners who serve minors.
And we must say we are now going to draw the line. We are now going to say if you are a tavern and you sell alcohol to underage children, that tavern must be closed and be closed permanently.
Singapore hanged 2 drug traffickers in what campaigners condemned as a shameful and inhuman punishment, taking to 4 the number of executions in the city-state since March. Those executed were Kalawant Singh, a 32-year-old from neighboring Malaysia, and Singaporean Nora Shari Gaus, said prominent rights campaigner Kirsten Han. Han told AFP News that Kalawant's sister had been given his death certificate and that Nora Shari's family had brought his remains to a mosque. Prisons officials did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Kalawant and Nora Shari were convicted in 2016 of trafficking heroin in the same case. The Malaysian lodged a last-ditch appeal yesterday, with his lawyers arguing he provided information that helped authorities arrest a key suspected drug trafficker. But a 3-judge panel dismissed the appeal, saying drug enforcement officials did not use any information he provided to arrest the suspect. Singapore resumed executions in March after a hiatus of 2 years with the hanging of a Singaporean drug trafficker. Activists fear more will be conducted in the coming months.
About 330 scientists and volunteers are working on migrating trees from the more resistant south of France to the north, where native species are dying in silence due to global warming. The cause is the Chantilly Estate's sandy soil that does not retain water. Rising temperatures also broke the cycles of extreme cold weather that has regulated parasite populations. 2 to 3 times a week, teams clean up the land to determine its characteristics, understand why some native species are dying out, and select those from other places that should replace them. The coordinator of the volunteers clarifies that they are not replacing everything with new species. The idea is to work more and more as a patchwork so that if there's an insect attack on certain trees, other species will survive. According to a scientist, the effects of global warming are showing up in Chantilly Forest 5 to 10 years earlier than the rest of France. Hence, the interest in turning this sentinel into an open-air laboratory and developing solutions that could be useful to other forests.
A sea lion of the species Dos Pelos sudamericano that appeared 20 days ago in the Riachuelo, an ultra-polluted freshwater course of Buenos Aires, was returned to the sea after a rehabilitation process. Christian Gillett, head of rescue and rehabilitation of fauna of the Tamaican Foundation, said that they transferred the sea lion to Mundo Marino Foundation after assisting in stabilizing the sea animal for 6 days. The foundation then prepared the sea lion for reintegration into its natural habitat, the sea.
Acabamos de reinsertar un ejemplar de lobo marino de 2 pelos, juvenil, que hace unas semanas atrás llamó la atención allí en Capital Federal porque apareció en las aguas del Riachuelo.
The foundation is also alarmed because in the last few months, there have been frequent sightings of small animals, generally juveniles, appearing in riverbeds.
Ejemplares muchas veces en esa búsqueda frenética de alimento pueden fácilmente llevar, digamos, introducirse por canales y terminar en ámbitos fluviales.
Coming up, Spain eyes post-pandemic tourism record after a dazzling summer surge. Legendary musician Carlos Santana collapses on stage during concert. And check out Philpost's commemorative covers featuring President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. and Vice President Sara Duterte. Find out more when we return here on Mata ng Agila International.
Isang babae sa Malabon ang nagdemanda ng kanyang kapitbahay sapagkat ibinenta nito ang kanyang bakod.
Na-flat po kasi. Okay lang po. Hindi kasi ako marunong gumamit ito.
Kwenta po yung binigay nyo. Ito po, bali, suklin nyo po, 2 turon, tsaka 2 piso.
Oh no! It's Biro only! It's BO! Sa Net 25! Biro only, bro!
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Crypto derivatives exchange BitMEX announced restrictions for Russian residents using the platform from the EU. RT News reported that changes to the BitMEX policy are being made in connection with the sanctions imposed by the European Union. Changes will affect Russian residents, including persons trading on behalf of any legal entity accessing the services from the exchange from the EU. Such users will not be able to access the account while in the European Union from July 11. However, the restrictions will not affect Russian clients of the exchange located in Russia, as well as Russian citizens using BitMEX services from EU countries if they are residents of the EU or Switzerland or have dual citizenship of the EU or Switzerland.
Spain was the world's second favorite holiday destination before the pandemic hit in 2020, and this year it looks set to reclaim its place. Thanks to the travel frenzy sweeping across Europe, Spain has seen a dazzling surge in tourist numbers. According to Spain's tourism ministry, 22.7 million tourists visited the country in the first 5 months of 2022. This was 7 times the number in the same period last year. The trend is set to continue into the summer. Exceltour Tourism Association said July and August could even be similar to levels reached in 2019, which was a record year for Spain. The destinations which are likely to benefit most from this visitor surge are the Andalusian coastline, Canary Islands, and Balearic Islands. And the subsectors with the most optimistic outlook include leisure parks and car hire firms. Nevertheless, soaring inflation figures suggest tough times will return after the season ends. While the sector has so far shown resilience, an analyst says the economic slowdown caused by the war in Ukraine will affect Spain's tourism industry.
Rafael Nadal overcame an injury to beat Taylor Fritz and reached the Wimbledon semifinals for an 8th time, keeping alive his dream of a calendar Grand Slam. The second seed lost the first set and had to take a medical timeout in the second, but raced his game to win in a match lasting 4 hours and 21 minutes. Nadal, a 22-time Grand Slam champion, will play Maverick Australian Nick Kyrgios for a place in Sunday's final. He admitted he was suffering from an abdominal problem and confessed he does not know whether he will be fit to face Kyrgios in Friday's Wimbledon semifinals. Nadal is also bidding to win his 23rd Grand Slam title and equal Serena Williams in second place on the all-time list for most Grand Slam singles titles.
Tourists watch as members of an Iraqi paragliding team launch at sunset from Mount Asmar to glide over Iraq's northeastern city of Sulaymaniyah. The autonomous Kurdistan region in Iraq is a popular spot for intensive paragliding clubs. Iraqi paragliders say that this type of sport needs courage, physical strength, and mental concentration. According to one sports enthusiast, danger is a word that can describe paragliding, but there is also adventure, passion, and fun.
Kazuki Takahashi, the creator of the hit manga series Yu-Gi-Oh!, has passed away at the age of 60. The Japan Coast Guard discovered the manga artist's body in the sea off Okinawa yesterday and confirmed his identity this morning. He was wearing snorkeling gear when found. Though no visible injuries were seen, the police and Coast Guard will continue to investigate the circumstances leading to his death. No news yet has been released about his funeral.
Fans of legendary rocker Carlos Santana was left in utter shock when the 74-year-old guitarist suddenly collapsed off stage. Santana was in mid-performance night in Michigan when he passed out 40 minutes into his set. Reports said that he sat down on a riser, where he apparently lost consciousness. Meanwhile, Cindy Blackman shared an update via Instagram saying that the rock star is now resting and is doing well. Santana shared he had forgotten to eat and drink water and passed out as a result. His wife thanked everyone and promised that Santana will be good as new soon.
In Italy, farm animals are being given showers, fans, and air conditioning in their stalls to try to keep them cool amid the current heat wave there. The abnormal heat has caused the local cows to become stressed and produce 15% less milk, which corresponds to about 3 liters of milk produced by each cow per day. For cows, the ideal temperature is between 22 Celsius and 24 Celsius. Cow farmers say that above that temperature, the animals eat little, drink a lot, and produce less milk.
The Philippine Postal Corporation, or PhilPost, has released the commemorative cover of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Vice President Sara Duterte. PhilPost said it was released in June 30 in time for the inauguration of President Marcos, but it was immediately sold out. In the commemorative cover of Marcos, his photo and the image of Malacanang was featured. VP Duterte's commemorative cover features her photo, Davao City's Monument of Peace, and the image of the Philippine Eagle. PhilPost will also issue a commemorative stamp of President Marcos Jr.'s inauguration. Once available, the stamps can be bought at post shops in Manila's Central Post Office. The commemorative cover cost 30 pesos each.
And here's what happened on this day, July 7, in history. In 1892, a group of Filipino patriots led by Andres Bonifacio formally founded the Katipunan in Tondo, Manila. Initially a secret organization, the Anti-Spanish Society had Philippine independence as its goal. It eventually recruited members from various parts of Manila and nearby provinces. In 1928, pre-sliced bread went on sale for the first time. The loaves were baked by a local company in Chillicothe, Missouri, and were cut using Otto Roeder's invention, the automatic bread slicing machine. At first, sliced bread failed to fly off the shelves, partly because they were sloppy looking. But after a few improvements to the slicing machine, it earned its place in hearts and homes across the U.S. And in 2011, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 had its world premiere in London. It is the 8th and final film of J.K. Rowling's popular children's book series. Part 2 grossed over $1.3 billion worldwide and became the highest-grossing film of 2011.
And before we end tonight's broadcast, here's a quote from Dr. Christy Hartman, a behavioral scientist. Arrogant people are insecure and often repel others. Truly confident people feel good about themselves and attract others to them.
I believe that. I believe that when people are mean to you, that means they're just projecting some anger that they have inside.
And some insecurity that they're trying to battle.
And, you know, that's why you have to always be nice to everyone. That's what I always say. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates in our social media channels. I'm CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.